Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for the JOJOLands Chapter 5 review titled November Rain. As after Rohan managed to take out most of the gang, it's all up to Jodio to save the day. So very exciting chapter this month, packed full of action, interesting interactions, and plot progression as we conclude this whole Rohan prologue arc and see more of November Rain's ability and finally answers many of the questions surrounding the mysterious diamond and lava rocks. That ties into the part's overall theme so far of mechanisms and gives more insight into what they could possibly be and the powers at play here. So jumping right into the chapter, starting off with the cover page, we have a nice clean Jodio portrait this month with the text "Rise up to the pinnacle of this world's mechanisms," which as I just mentioned will be relevant later on in the chapter. So into the actual material now, we pick things up right where we left off with the diamond escaping from Dragona's hands as Rohan is tying up Paco and Usagi, who then immediately calls the police, sparing no details besides the whole stand user thing, and for whatever reason, when Rohan says his location, it's censored out of the manga. I imagine this is just because this villa is based on an actual location in Hawaii, so Araki didn't want to give the exact road it's on as people might actually go there and try to find it as a sort of tourist location, although he easily could have just made up a name, but I guess it being blanked out gives the reader the impression it's a real place. And I would be really interested to see later down the road in author notes and such if Araki actually visited Hawaii during his break for reference material and real life experience, because Araki usually visits the places he depicts in his manga to make sure he's able to capture the detail and atmosphere of his setting as faithfully as possible, as we've seen Araki visited Italy in preparation for part 5 and the American Southwest before Steel Ball Run. So the fact that Rohan is staying in this villa and he didn't give the exact name, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a depiction of the exact villa Araki stayed at during his trip, as everything about it is extremely detailed down to the decorations and furniture, and of course Rohan is always the self-insert for Araki. So I would be really interested if we ever find out more about Araki's preparation for part 9 and if this is connected to his real life experience. And I don't mean being robbed by a bunch of teenagers, but just going to Hawaii to do research and staying in a nice villa. Maybe Araki wanted to illustrate that experience he had, so we used Rohan to do that. But of course, that's all just like a what if. So moving on in the chapter, after Rohan gets off the phone with the cops, he goes to tie up Dragona, who again tries to grab the diamond and make a run for it. Although right as Dragona puts the diamond in their back pocket, it teleports across the room into a mug, which doesn't seem to surprise Rohan at all, like he was expecting it, as he also notices that some of the money Paco tried to steal makes its way back to Rohan, moving on its own like the diamond, which in my live reaction that are available on my Patreon for free by the way on the same day the chapter's release, I immediately thought Milagro Man, which would have been so wild to see Araki bring back that curse-like stand that returns money, and it would have made sense too, as the last time we saw it, it was in Japan, where Rohan is from. But as we see later, it's not the Milagro Man, and the money and diamond moving are actually connected to the lava rocks, which in some ways confirms the theory we've been building in the previous reviews. But until that reveal, Rohan continues to go after Dragona, although he's interrupted by rainfall inside the villa, as we see in nearly an instant the entire living room is completely soaked, catching Rohan's attention as he leaves Dragona to go investigate. He walks around a bit, touches the ground, and is trying to figure out the stand's range and limit, and as he's standing on the carpet, he falls into the ground, breaking through the concrete floor, when Jodio then grabs Rohan by the neck, tying him to a post, which may or may not be another Breaking Bad reference to Crazy 8 in season 1, although this could just be a coincidence. So I was expecting in this chapter to see a lot more into November Rain's ability, the mechanics behind it, and what else the rain could do. Although based on everything we've seen up until now, it looks pretty clear that Jodio's ability is just heavy rain, which right now seems a little basic for a main JoJo. So I'll definitely be interested to see more of how Araki continues to write this ability in the future. Like in this scene for example, Jodio took advantage of the rug, which was able to soak up a bunch of rain, making it heavy enough to break the concrete floor when Rohan stepped on it, like a trap door. Although from how we've seen Jodio use it before, it seems he just as easily could have made it rain on Rohan and pinned him to the ground, like the cops in chapter 1, as he's able to make it rain pretty much instantly, so Rohan wouldn't even have a chance to run away. So I'm just worried that the stand might have a low creative ceiling, as from what we've seen, it's nowhere near as dynamic as say a Gold Experience, Stone Free, or even Soft and Wet. Although this could be an intentional decision as well, making the JoJo slightly underpowered, so he'll have to rely more on his friends and use their stands together. As so far in the JoJoLands, Jodio already has more allies than Johnny and Josuke, who usually worked in a duo or trio. So more teamwork would be great, and Jodio isn't just beating every minor villain by pinning them to the ground, as right now that seems like a pretty easy solution to most of his problems. So with Rohan bested by Jodio, we have last month's magazine cover finally coming to fruition, which I guess was kind of a spoiler, and following this, Jodio unexpectedly fanboys over Rohan, telling his friends not to lay another hand on him, he's a special guy, and that he respects him, which will be important later on in the chapter as their dynamic develops and allows Jodio to solve the mystery that's going on here. For now, Rohan is understandably pissed, and he warns the group of the dangers they're getting into, which will certainly be important later down the road, as it seems Rohan is foreshadowing future enemies, saying you would have been better off being captured by me. Unfortunately, as a result, what's going to happen next will be even more dangerous, and says that the group are being followed. Although Jodio disregards this warning and asks Rohan to call the police and tell them he made a mistake, which is just the perfect setup for Rohan to say his iconic line, "I refuse." And Jodio is just like, "You refuse?" with the biggest look of disappointment on his face, followed by a little "aw dang," which is just too funny, as for the reader, this is a cool Rohan moment, but for Jodio, it's almost like he's missing out on the inside joke, just being confused. So thank you Araki for the fan service and multiple callbacks to part 4, starting with Rohan approaching Dragona, and then when he fell into the floor, if you remember, that's actually how he defeated Cheap Trick. So it's great to not only see Araki bring Rohan back, but also having a lot of fun with the character. And following Rohan's refusal, the story does something really cool that continues to utilize Rohan's presence, as it starts to get kind of meta when Jodio tells Rohan about how he's a big fan and he reads his stuff all the time, saying it really speaks to me in a way, like the approach or your stance towards manga, or like philosophy, which leads Jodio to think in the same way as the readers, as we know how Rohan goes about creating manga through life experience and research, so we knew immediately Rohan wasn't here just for vacation, as we've been theorizing for the past 3 months he came to Hawaii to research these lava rocks. So Jodio, because he's a fan of Rohan's work and saw his laptop earlier and understands his approach, is also able to figure out that he didn't come here for vacation. Rather, he came to Hawaii for the lava rocks, as well as understands their value, making the same conclusions as the reader, which is a super self-aware and clever way to write Jodio's character, as he's almost able to be a self-insert for fans, or at least represent us in this scene. So last chapter, when we didn't see Jodio, he was apparently figuring this all out and found the lava rocks in the safe, and Jodio is now able to use them as leverage against Rohan, saying if at any point they are pursued by the police or even an ability after they leave, he'll destroy the rocks, breaking one right off the bat to make sure Rohan knows he's not messing around, which I feel like will be relevant later on in the story, as if these rocks are going to be as important as, say, the Holy Corpse or Rokakaka, I bet Jodio will regret that once he fully understands them, as it really struck a nerve with Rohan, making him lose his shit seeing it break. So with Rohan under their thumb, they can finally leave the villa safely with Diamond and Rock in hand. Although on their way out, Rohan calmly asks to speak to Jodio alone, and he's not coming from a place of anger or pleading. Rather, through Jodio's display of resolve and appreciation for his work, he's gained his respect, as Rohan tells him it's a big responsibility taking the rock, but if he takes good care of it, it will make him filthy rich. Such a mechanism will gradually become his. A law of nature lies in that lava rock, and gives him even more confidence and encouragement, saying, Jodio, embrace ambition, don't lose heart, keep climbing, which is really just the absolute best outcome of this whole arc for Rohan to take on this mentor role to Jodio and set him off on his journey. As if you noticed, Rohan uses the word mechanism when describing the rock's ability, and that's the first time that word has actually been spoken within the part. Although Jodio has said mechanism about 100 times, it's always through a narrative perspective, and the narration isn't really Jodio's thoughts at that moment. It's more like him speaking from the future, or like Araki is speaking through Jodio's voice when it comes to the part's greater themes, like the big monologue in chapter 1 and other interjections. So the way it's been laid out to the reader, it could seem like Jodio's motivation has been mechanism since chapter 1, although it's more clear now that Jodio has no idea what a mechanism is, and it's Rohan who introduces him to the concept and will now form his motivation. So we talked a lot last month about how the lava rocks are most likely a blessing from the earth or a supernatural object, like the Holy Corpse and Rokakaka, although it turns out I was wrong about the idea that they were granting stand abilities to nearby things like the diamond or the cat. Rather, the lava rocks attract money and things of value, which explains why the diamond has been moving on its own and teleporting. It's being pulled in by the rocks, as it moved towards Rohan earlier in the chapter, just like the money, but it was actually getting closer to Jodio, who was approaching with them. And this attraction ability of the lava is pretty much confirmed when the gang is leaving the villa, as Dragona asks Paco to hold on to the diamond as they haven't had much luck with it, and we see that Paco is able to hold on to it without an issue. And it's not because there's something wrong with Dragona, but it's because they now have the lava rocks. The diamond is no longer trying to get away or return to it, they're together. And I don't think it's because of the hustle either, because as we saw earlier, the rock could literally teleport things, so I don't think his stand would be able to counter that. And possibly related, Usagi also mentions that he snagged an original drawing of Dark Pink Boy, and he asked Jodio if it has any value. So I find this to be a very specific detail right after Jodio gets the rock that attracts valuables. So maybe the rock does more than just moves objects, but actually influences the actions of people around them to ensure it's attracting value, similar to how the Milagro Man influenced people and events to result in money being returned. So it seems as long as Jodio holds onto the lava rock, its mechanism will continue, pulling in value that will eventually make him filthy rich. And this mechanism all seems to be based on the fact that Rohan said a law of nature lies in that lava rock, but I'm not sure exactly what law of nature it could be. Other examples of these laws Araki has depicted through abilities include things like time, gravity, fate, miracles, calamity, and equivalent exchange. Invisible forces existing all around us that create the rules of the world. So honestly, I have no idea what law of nature could specifically bring wealth, as it's different from the concept of miracles and blessings as seen through the Holy Corpse, as the rocks only seem to attract things of value, and not even intrinsic value, but specifically monetary value based on the society humans have created. So I'm curious to learn how this is possibly a law of nature if it's based on an imaginary construct created by man. And some might say that, well, everything, even something like time, is a construct created by man, but things like gravity are at least observable forces that exist within nature, with or without us, that are just baked into reality. When something like getting rich only exists if someone actually does it, and society as a whole values money. It's not necessarily fundamental to nature. But we have the whole rest of the part to learn the truth about the mechanisms, which I'm sure will slowly be unveiled over time. As Jodio explained earlier, while becoming filthy rich means being able to earn lots of money, what's far more important is mechanisms. So this whole monetary aspect may just be a facade or a side effect of the rock's true power. But moving on from all of this philosophy mumbo jumbo, the chapter ends off with the cat from chapter 3 coming back, but it is now a clouder of cats. Yes, that's a real word. A group of 3 cats or more is called a clouder, fun fact. And they all seem to look the same and are working together chasing down the group, as they are probably after either the rock or the diamond. So this could be another rat type situation where a group of animals all control one stand, or they all just have the same stand. And this could be what Rohan meant when he said the group were being followed, as he probably read in their books that they were attacked by a stand. Although Rohan doesn't seem to know exactly who the enemy is. And if you remember, the cats only attacked the group when they had the diamond, so whoever they are who is controlling them may have no idea about the lava rocks, and could be something like a rival gang or a criminal who's also after the diamond. And maybe even it's Meryl May Q trying to steal it from them to cut them out of their share, as she's the only other person who knows about this after all. But that's kind of like mad speculation, so don't value that too much. And the last note I have for this chapter is Rohan potentially foreshadowing a betrayal from the group, as earlier he said to Jodio, "Can you trust those comrades of yours? I wouldn't if I were in your place." And remember, Rohan has read the thoughts of Dragona, Paco, and Usagi, so he may know something about their true intentions, or I could simply be reading way too into this and he's just telling Jodio to be careful. So a very cool prologue for the JOJOLands that completely flips Araki's storytelling on its head, as unlike part 7 and 8 where the whole story was about our main JoJo trying to get the supernatural object, Jodio starts the story with his. So I'm curious to see if he will be holding on to this rock for the entire part, or it'll be more like the Holy Corpse where it's constantly fought over, changes possession, and maybe this is just one piece of a larger mechanism and we'll have to get more of these rocks and venture into the volcanoes. Who the hell knows? So thank you all so much for watching the video and joining me for another JOJOLands review. Please be sure to like the video if you enjoyed or if you just made it till the end, and subscribe to the channel if you're not already, as 81% of viewers in the last 30 days have not subscribed yet. So if you're in the 81%, definitely fix that, subscribe to the channel already, and I'll talk to you guys all real soon in a new video. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'm out. Peace.